Hello again, my wonderful viewers. Welcome back to my videography series, episode 13. Sorry I missed posting last week, but I just worked 12 days straight. In my last video, I mentioned some of my work experience, so I decided to continue that in this week's topic. So, in today's episode, I will talk about various positions I've held through the years. One might expect I'd have only a few jobs, but in fact, I've had several. So, once again, I will take you back to the beginning. My first job was in the summer of '96. I was 16 at that time. I got a job at my old elementary school. My high school guidance counselor directed me to administration, where I applied for and received the position, which was custodian assistant, meaning I assisted the custodians with their daily tasks. I was still a minor, so I needed to get special permission to take on such employment. Being summer, the school was not open at the time, but a summer camp made it their base of operations, so I had to work around them. My job responsibilities mostly included cleaning classrooms, desks, and bathrooms. I won't get into too much detail. I also needed to empty garbage cans and paint walls and other surfaces. Sometimes I had to work outside. It was a particularly hot summer that year, all for $5 an hour. I somehow managed to get through it, but I certainly didn't want another job after that. So I didn't work again until 4 years later, the summer of 2000. Actually, I never really learned how to get a job. Online job boards were just coming into being and print ads were being phased out. In 2000, my mother helped me secure employment at my local beach. I only wanted to work there to see someone special to me, but I'll get more into that in a future video. Once again, I worked in the maintenance department, so I cleaned. This time, I cleaned the beachfront and surrounding environs, and, of course, the bathrooms. Yeah, I did that. Sometimes I assisted in transporting equipment or helping other departments with their workloads, like the gardening crew. Sometimes I worked the parking shift and had to record or collect payment from all vehicles entering and exiting the beach, including company vehicles, but mostly relegated to the beach. It was an especially hot summer. Not only that, I didn't have a license at that point, so I had to take my bike 5 miles each way to and from work. It was an especially sweltering and rough summer, leaving me drained every day. The following summer, I decided to take a different route. My older brother had previously used a temp agency to find work, so I used the same agency to find a job. Of course, I had no idea what kind of work I would do, so I got a job doing clerical office and mailroom work. First, I got a job at a company called Marsh, where I was responsible for filing. It was similar to the volunteer work I did in my high school guidance office. I held that position for about 3 weeks to a month. Then, I was placed in a hospital. It was basically the PR wing. I processed documents into the hospital's databases, surveys and such. It wasn't bad work. This was my entrance to data processing, a field I continued with for more than 10 years. I worked there for about a month and a half before returning to my university. I hadn't had any jobs while I was going to school. Then, I graduated from my university and still didn't know what kind of work I wanted to do. So, once again, I found work at the old temp agency. For 2 weeks, I assisted in a company's mailroom, stuffing envelopes and delivering correspondence between departments. Then I was placed in my first permanent position. First American, a tax reporting agency. At first, my responsibilities included entering backlog customer files into the company's database. All the necessary data was provided to me. I was exceedingly good at this. So good, my company hired me full time. And with this came additional responsibilities. So now I had to drive all around New York State collecting property tax data. I didn't relish this. First, I didn't like driving. Second, often data wasn't immediately available, meaning I had to return at a later date. Very inefficient. But I only stayed with them for 13 months before I quit. Then I was back to square one. I applied to work at Acclaim Entertainment, but they went out of business a few months later. I didn't want to go back to the temp agency, so I looked in the newspaper and found a local job. I did data entry work at a debt management company, AmeriCorps. It wasn't bad work, even though I was back to $10 an hour. Eventually, that rose to $13.50 an hour. So I added customer data to our database. I also scanned correspondence and assisted other departments. I had a lot of responsibilities, more than even my supervisor. But I continued working there for 6 years and 11 months. The company shut down right before my anniversary date. Well, that was during the financial crisis, so I had a great deal of difficulty finding work after that, and was unemployed for 9 months. I tried to find work through online job boards, but there were no local jobs for which I felt suitable. They were mostly management and sales jobs. I tried my luck applying for a sales position, but I absolutely failed their sales test. I couldn't even sell anything to my own family. I never heard back from them. I attended job fairs and even applied for work at an insurance company, but I never heard back from them either. I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I didn't want to go back to a temp agency. Eventually, though, I did. My old temp agency was out of business, so I found another. I absolutely didn't want to do data entry work anymore. First, I assisted in a law office. I did that for 2 weeks, making $12 an hour. Then, for the next 2 months, I got a job at a shoe and boot company, Jimlar. I left that company and started working at another company, what would be my third full-time job, the Northwest Company, which made towels, blankets, and other things, even cups. I was basically a liaison between the design team and the factories. This was pretty much my first contact with China. I was also learning Chinese then, and also learning about Chinese culture. So I worked there for a year and 9 months. I quit at the end of 2013 and moved to China to teach English. First, I got a job with English First in Chengdu, an English training school where I taught school age and younger children. Once again, it wasn't a bad experience, but there was one especially naughty child. Eventually, I was moved to the VIP department, where I met my favorite student ever. We bonded in a father-daughter way. I was even invited to her home, so it was a pleasant experience. Then the VIP department was phased out, and my contract with the company ended after 20 months. So then I found an agent who got me a job at a local private primary and secondary school in Qingbaijiang, a district of Chengdu where I worked for 10 months. At which point I decided to leave Chengdu. I moved to Beijing to work at EF there, but I found a job in Japan and took that chance. After living in Beijing for 1 month, I moved to Japan. I lived in Sagamihara in Kanagawa Prefecture. I worked at Nova Eikaiwa School teaching adults. I worked there for a year, but found the staff particularly difficult to work with. There were some problems early on, mostly due to my lack of funds, and after my contract ended, they chose not to renew it. So I had to leave Japan. Fortunately, my agent in China contacted me and got me employment, this time in Changzhou, Jiangsu province. By this time, I was getting a bit tired of moving around. I faced a lot of problems before and after I arrived in China. I was going to work for Shane, but because I was sick when I arrived in China, they canceled my contract. So I got a job at World English, once again teaching adults. This was great work and I enjoyed living in Changzhou, even though I still missed my angel in Japan. So I worked content for a year. Then I was contacted by an old acquaintance in Chengdu who found work for me in a kindergarten in Zhejiang province. But my energy levels were inadequate to deal with such young children. So instead, I moved to Jinan, where I have been teaching for the past year at a private primary and secondary school. The pay is actually pretty good. Well, I'm back to that again, but is it really for me? I still don't know what I want to do with my life, so I let the powers that be guide me. Where will I go next? Who knows? Well, that's my employment history. Thanks for listening. I hope you found this entertaining. If you want, give a like and subscribe. You can support me on my Patreon. Link in the description. Until next time.